There is still no sign of a Fairfield woman who's been missing since Saturday night. 9 News reporter Bryce Onslinger is live in Fairfield with what authorities are doing now to find Katelyn Markham. Bryce?
Well, Clyde, Markham should be celebrating her 22nd birthday tonight. Instead, friends, family, and other volunteers have been searching the streets of Fairfield looking for any sign of her. As Fairfield firefighters and police officers pack up for the night, volunteers talk about what's next in the search for Katelyn Markham.
Nobody knows anything. She just disappeared.
Markham is a family friend of Casey Sargent. He, along with several others, were out walking through Fairfield neighborhoods today, looking for the missing woman for the second night in a row.
Yesterday, we were pretty much walking through people's yards and checking garbage cans and sheds and whatever was not unlocked.
Investigators say Markham's fiance, John Carter, was the last person to see her.
She always had to make a list. She always had to do things that, that would prepare her. So she would never be a whim kind of a person. She wouldn't just up and go. It's totally out of character.
Carter says Markham was fine when he left her townhome on Dorshire Drive at around 11 Saturday night. He says Markham was headed to bed after the two had talked about their plans for a trip to Colorado in November. Carter says the couple was hoping to move there.
We'd been talking about going to Colorado for days. I mean, if she was scared, she would have said something.
Police say Markham's cell phone is gone, but her car and purse were left at her home. Investigators say there is no evidence of foul play, but there's also no reasonable explanation for where Markham could be.
On August 14, 2011, a young woman vanished from her home in Fairfield, Ohio. She was many things to many people. She was a gifted artist who inspired those around her. She was also a sister, a daughter, a friend, and a fiance. Her name was Katelyn Markham, and this is her story.
Well, she was about 3 hours old. We adopted her. And I was one of the first ones that held her after she was cleaned up. It was a private adoption. It was a long 3 days because we were only allowed to hold her just for that few minutes that she was born. They took her to a nursery and we weren't allowed to touch her or see her. The nurses would kind of roll her up to the window and let us stand there, but it's the first time I saw Katelyn.
I remember whenever I was little, I'd just follow her around everywhere. She had her friends, and I considered them my friends, even though I was the little annoying sister. But she was always fine with me tagging along and hanging out with her, even though I'm sure I was annoying.
She always was very outgoing, and we'd go on a vacation or a long weekend, and she's got friends right away. She's see another little kid at a pool and they're friends. And
at the young age, I thought she was always like bossy, but she always had everything under control. She would always take care of me whenever I got home after school and our parents weren't home, and she kind of played that like older sister motherly role, and she was always fun and outgoing even at a young age.
Katelyn was known for her bright, bubbly personality, caring nature, and a warm smile.
I moved here from the Dayton area and I was in 6th grade, and she sat behind my music class, and ever since then we had every single class together until we graduated. Immediately, because I was a new student, so of course I was shy and I didn't know who to talk to, and she immediately was like, "Hi, I'm Katelyn," and like just made me feel super comfortable just outgoing and just bubbly, as she's always been.
This next song that I'm about to sing is for this girl right here. Yes, she's a very special girl. Alright, here we go. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when the skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
I just remember I felt really comfortable with her, so, you know, we immediately got along and we became like best friends, like really quickly. Her laugh was so contagious. I remember that most of all. She took time for me, which, you know, a lot of people didn't. I just loved being around her. She made you feel good, you know. She was just a great person all around.
She was just like a blast of energy all the time, and she was just so, I don't know, she was just so real. Like when you were talking with her, like you knew that you had her complete undivided attention. Like even as we grew older, we would go to parties and such, and you get lost in conversations with everybody talking at once and stuff, but she would just focus in on you and just know that you had her attention completely and 100% and would be there with you.
She was very smart, very beautiful, very outgoing. She loved to help people. That's one of the reasons why we became so close friends. She just was very easygoing. Like you could laugh and joke, and she was just your perfect friend. If you ever could dream what that would look like.
Very funny. She was the most funniest one of the group. She could always come back with something funny to say, even if you were having the worst day ever. So she was just very funny and enjoyable, and she was a great person to be around.
I have to say that she's probably the most honest person I've ever met. I mean, whether it was compliments or being brutally honest, she just didn't hold back. Without sounding mean on top of that, if she said something that may have been taken negatively, she still sounded pretty happy, like, you know, cheery, like she wasn't trying to hurt anybody's feelings ever, really.
She was eccentric. She was different than anyone you'd ever meet in your life. She was hilarious. She's hilarious. Everything, she was pretty serious when she needed to be, but everything was a joke. She could make light of most situations. Like she could feel the tension when she walked in a room and be like, "Hey guys, what's going on?" And she'd just make everybody laugh.
Always bubbly. Like she was always outgoing and talkative and not shy of anybody. She wasn't at all scared to, you know, go up to strangers and be like, and make new friends. So that's who she always was, regardless of any situation.
As a child, Katelyn had many interests, but she quickly developed a passion for art.
And her art from day one, you know, I think she was 5 years old and she's doing facial details, you know, eyelashes and eyebrows and things that, you know, most kids on a face, they just do eyes and a mouth, and you know, she's doing all the details. So she had that talent from the get-go.
She's always artistic, obviously, and kind of envied that. I wanted to be artistic like her.
She was a very colorful person, extremely artistic. That's mainly what we all did, was sit around and laugh and color or draw. She always had markers and a notebook with her. And if she couldn't find a notebook, she'd grab one of ours. So there would just be pages upon pages upon pages every time she came, just doodling or drawing something silly for us. So.
She was very good at that. We had conversations about that because my brother is also really good at that. So we would have a lot of art conversation when she would show me some stuff she's done, because she's very good at it, actually. Now, you see a lot of people say they can and can't, but she can draw. She's really good at it.
She is art. Like if you look up art in the dictionary, you see her picture. Like, yeah, she's a wonderful person. All she does is talk about projects, and she would bring over like art pictures and like projects and stuff, and we'd work on stuff together. So yeah, she was really big in the art. Like that's all she did. She went to school for arts. we were all talking like, hey, will your parents let us have a paint party? No. Will your parents let us have a paint party? No. I was like, well, my dad's in Afghanistan. He really doesn't have a choice. So we went and we bought plastic, and I always call it like our Dexter party. That's because, I don't know if you've seen the show, but he wraps rooms in plastic, and that's what we did. My dad's entire house was like from wall to wall, the ceiling, the floor, plastic. And we literally had a paint party. Like, we would throw paint at each other. That's what we did. It was fun.
Even when she started dating and everything, she still, like I said, let me tag along and everything, even when she would go hang out with her boyfriends.
It was September 5th, 2005, and the Renaissance Festival was in town. So we were going to take all the girls to the Renaissance Festival, and John was invited, but he was the only boy. And he said, can I invite this girl? I really like her, and I'd kind of like to start asking her out. And I said, sure, and the more the merrier. So they took off and came back. He had bought her a little outfit, and we came home, and, after she left, he goes, I really like her. I think I'm going to ask her to be my girlfriend.
I have always loved him, honestly. I used to look up to their relationship. I wanted something like that. It just, when you were with them, you were just laughing and smiling and just always having the best time. Just the way they were very compatible.
He was an alright kind of guy. He would, I'm actually very protective over my friends, so yeah, I investigate that quite a bit when that goes down. But he was a nice man.
They seemed like they were so in love, It was like the perfect relationship that everybody wanted. You could just tell that they loved each other, and it was very sincere.
I have pictures of her with John at prom, and prom was in 08. So that's what I'm guessing. I didn't know John that well. I had never met John until prom.
The first time I met Katelyn was in a party setting. We were at the same place at the same time. I had seen her at school like a long time ago, but we didn't really talk to each other. So the first time we talked to each other, she was with John, and they were just messing around and acting silly, and I thought that they were really funny, and we actually hit it off and had a few good laughs that night. So
Katelyn grew up in Fairfield, a small city just north of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Well, Fairfield is a pretty large city here in Butler County, and Fairfield is adjacent to Hamilton. It has more what I would call a community feel. It's smaller, has a community feel, but it has a very large school system. And it is adjacent to the interstate, so it does have some of the interesting aspects that come along with that, as well as crime and commerce and things like that, all that kind of make it a small town feel with a core community in their village green, as well as a feel for a larger city and some of the things that you can do, in a larger city.
Katelyn planned to make art her career. She took classes at the Art Institute of Cincinnati. It was there that she met Kara Moore.
She's a very friendly girl. She worked in the bookstore at the Art Institute, and extremely helpful, extremely friendly. She was the kind of person that if you walked by where she was at and you say, hey, Katelyn, she'd wave before she even looked up to see who you were. She was that kind of person. She was one of the first students in the program, actually. And she had garnered a lot of respect from the professors. She was very well respected.
Although Katelyn was working in her college bookstore, she took a second job at David's Bridal, a wedding boutique in northern Cincinnati. Katelyn and John had planned to move to Colorado after she graduated from the Art Institute in November.
At one point she had 3 jobs and school. So she was very motivated and was not a slacker by any means.
When she was about to graduate in September, I think that following October, they were planning on getting married and going to Colorado and starting their life.
They had planned on moving. I think they might have had jobs set up. At least they had plans for what they wanted to do, once they got there. I think a big group of friends was going to move, like they were all going to move together.
And they were going to leave the beginning of October to go to Colorado, but my daughter from down south, my daughter-in-law, was pregnant, and she wanted to do a baby shower with me. Katelyn did. So we were going to plan the baby shower for Thanksgiving, and they were going to move the Monday after Thanksgiving. She was going to move in with us at the end of August.
Allie actually moved in with us for a couple of 2 or 3 years. Then I started dating somebody else, and I moved out shortly before Katelyn was moving to Colorado, and Allie had moved back with her mother. So I was still maintaining it. I was paying the rent, I was paying the utilities, I was paying all that until Katelyn moved out.
On Saturday, August 13th, 2011, Katelyn worked a full day at David's Bridal. When her shift ended at 8 p.m., she came straight home, arriving around 8:30. She had planned on spending a quiet evening at home with her fiance, John Carter.
It was very strange. John called and screamed in my ear immediately, "Katelyn's missing." And my first thought was like, whoa, what do you mean Katelyn's missing? And he's just all frantic, and he goes, "I can't find her, she's missing," and he's just going on and on and on. And, never was it like, "Hey, Katelyn happened to be with you?" It was just immediate, "Katelyn's missing."
I was at home, and John called me, and he was just yelling in the phone, and I'm like, slow down, I can't, stop. And he goes, "Don't tell me to calm down, I'm upset, I'm scared." And finally I said, "But I can't understand what you're saying." And he said, "I can't find Katelyn, I can't find her anywhere." And he was telling me that he was really worried, and once he told me what was going on, I understood completely why he was worried, because she wasn't answering his text. He had called her father, and he didn't really know where she was, but he wasn't overly worried because he just called, "Do you know where Katelyn is? She's not responding to me." And he knew that she should have been home from work. Her car was there, her keys were there, the dog had been locked in the bedroom, and so he's telling me all this, and I realized this isn't Katelyn, and this isn't right.
The following day, on Sunday, August 14th, John arrived at the townhouse around 7 p.m. and was surprised to see Katelyn's car in the parking lot, as she was supposed to be working at David's Bridal that day. When he entered the home, Katelyn was nowhere to be found. Her purse and keys were in the bedroom, along with her dog, Murphy, but Katelyn, as well as her cell phone, was missing. At 7:58 p.m., John placed a call to 911.
Fairfield 911, where's your emergency?
Hi, my name is John Carter. I am calling. I know that you're not supposed to report a missing person before 24 hours, but my fiance is missing. I can't find her anywhere.
Okay, where did you see her last?
I saw her at like 12 o'clock last night. She stays in a house by herself, so I'm really nervous. Her car is still there.
Okay,
her
where
purse
at?
is still.
Is there an address,
Yeah, 5214 Dorshire Drive.
5214?
Dorshire, yes.
Okay. And you're out there now?
I'm heading out there now. I have been trying to get a hold of her, and I decided to go by her house to see if she was okay. And her car was still there. She would be at work right now, with her car, which is why I'm really freaking out.
What's her name?
Katelyn Markham.
Have you called hospitals or jails or anything? Where was she at midnight last night when you left?
She was at her house. She was going to bed. She wasn't going out to do anything, so she would have been in her bed. And I mean, I've been with her for 6 years. She's not deceiving, She doesn't.
Okay, and you guys didn't have an argument or anything?
Not at all.
The Fairfield Police Department arrived at the home and began searching for clues. Katelyn's home had now become a crime scene.
We received a call on Sunday about her missing about 8 p.m. Stating that she had not been seen since approximately midnight, about 20 hours earlier. Our police officers and investigators obtained permission to go through her apartment. We could find nothing amiss, no reason to believe that anything untoward had happened at that location. We commenced probably one of the most intense searches that the city of Fairfield's ever seen.
Investigators had little to go on. There were no signs of struggle in the townhome, no blood, no evidence of foul play. Katelyn had simply vanished.
I don't know who would do it, or if anybody did it, or I don't know. It's so up in the air, and I just want Katelyn back.
Did something accidentally happen to her? Did something sinister happen to her? But it started out as a young woman who, with everything to live for, who police thought may have just walked away from her condo for a few hours or a few days. And really, there was no proof that anything else had happened at that point, although family members, friends were always very concerned and were always putting in the forefront that they believed something had happened to her.
John told investigators that he had left Katelyn's house between the times of 11 and 11:30 p.m. that Saturday evening to meet some friends at a party. John also revealed to investigators that he last heard from Katelyn at 12:52 a.m. on Sunday morning when she texted him. He said that her text contained a picture of a photograph of Katelyn. According to the police, Katelyn's cell phone was turned off at 12:45 a.m., approximately the same time that John received the picture she had texted him.
Because there were 4 or 5 of Katelyn's and John's friends who had come over. We were just all sitting outside and just waiting. There was one police officer that showed up pretty quickly. And then after an hour or two, a couple more lieutenants or sergeants showed up. And eventually we all went down to the police station and took statements.
We went back to the apartment and John was there and a couple of the friends were already there and the police were there. And one of the police officers, one of the women came out and I said, "This isn't like her." And she said, "It doesn't look good."
They did a cursory look around the house and it's certainly not CSI. It's certainly not like the movies or TV. No, that's not what they did. It was just kind of poke around, look around, nothing's broken, I don't see any blood. And then they didn't lock it up, they didn't change the locks right away. You know, I think everybody kept saying, well, maybe she just, gave up and took a walk, or just said, forget all this, I can't handle the stress.
I knew that something was keeping Katelyn from responding. And I knew that Katelyn is the kind that never would have gone that long without contacting one of us, without talking to us, without letting us know where she was. She wouldn't have gone for a walk and, been gone that long. So I knew there was something.
She was 3 weeks away from getting her master's degree. 3 weeks away, 2 days before her birthday, to say, chuck this? No, that wasn't her. So it didn't take me long to start suspecting isn't quite the right word, but worrying. It didn't take long for me to know something's not right about this.
I got a call from our friend Katie and she said, "Hey, weird question, are you with Katelyn?" I'm like, "No, I'm out at Steven's house." "Why? What's up?" And she said, "We haven't heard from her since yesterday. Her car is at her house, but she's not answering her phone. We don't know what's going on. So if you hear from her, call me." I was like, "Okay." So 2 hours later, I had saw that 4 or 5 people posted a Facebook status about it. So I posted one too.
I was on Facebook. I believe I was at home. And Mary Holleran had posted something. "If you hear from Katelyn, please contact myself or John." And I was like, what's going on? I immediately contacted John because I thought it was a joke or something, And he told me that, she hadn't contacted anybody since midnight or around then, the night before.
She was just happy most of the time. I mean, even when she was upset about things, life in general pretty much made her happy from what I gather. But, I mean, her and John, they got along famously, and it didn't seem like her to leave anything behind and just disappear from everything she loved.
Knowing her, I just thought maybe she didn't have her phone, or, I would assume everyone would call John to try and find her. I just figured, she would contact us really soon, because that's just not like her at all.
I didn't want to believe it at first. A nice, kind girl like that, I just couldn't see nobody ever wanting to harm her. yeah, it was a very mind-scattering, heartbreaking discovery when I found out.
I kind of just brushed it off at first because she was there yesterday. I saw her the day before, and so I didn't really think anything of it. I kind of just thought, like, her birthday was around, so she probably went somewhere, just didn't really have her phone on her. Maybe her phone died, and I kind of just didn't really make it a big deal.
My ex, Joey, was the one that called me and just asked if I had seen her or if I had talked to her. I was like, no, I mean, not since last night after the fire at John's house. He was like, well, like, no one's seen her, no one knows where she is. And I was kind of taken back, like, that's kind of weird. Like, Katelyn doesn't just do that. She doesn't just, that's never happened before. And like, after that night and they still hadn't heard from her or seen her, I was just like, I knew something was wrong. Like, there's no way.
At first I thought it was a hoax because people do that on Facebook sometimes, say that they're missing or if they're dead or something. And I looked into it more, and I looked on John's Facebook and stuff and saw that it was really true. And then I started, asking everybody to send prayers and hope that she gets home. And it was heartbreaking for me because, even though we didn't talk or anything, it was still heartbreaking to hear one of my friends is missing.
In the days that followed, Fairfield police found no activity on Katelyn's credit cards, bank accounts, or cell phone. The police interviewed Katelyn's neighbors, one of whom reported seeing an unusual, boxy-looking car pull into the parking lot between midnight and 1 a.m. The car vanished quickly before anyone could identify its make and model or write down its license plate number.
We had officers going through the city almost inch by inch, trying to locate her. And as you might imagine, there was a wide range of publicity involving her disappearance, and we were inundated with volunteers.
It was a missing person. It was a young woman, young art student who's from Fairfield, and the police are looking for her. And that's the way it was put out there, and it was covered by one of our community reporters who writes about Fairfield.
Many people in the community began focusing on Katelyn's fiance, John Carter, as the primary suspect in the case. John and Katelyn had dated for 6 years, and they were engaged about a year prior to her going missing.
Giving up either. Katelyn Markham's fiance, John Carter, he tells me that every time his phone rings, he hopes that it's someone on the other line telling him that she's okay. He says when he left her on Saturday night, she was fine, but no one has heard from Markham since. Friends, police, and firefighters have searched the area for clues. Investigators have spent hours in Markham's home today looking for anything that could be out of place or that would help them figure out what happened. They say so far there's no sign of her running off or foul play. Markham's fiance says he can't sleep and he doesn't want to eat. He says all he cares about is finding out what happened.
I keep screaming that I just want her back. I mean, that's all I can think about is just having her back and holding her.
There were things on the Facebook. I mean, I read these things. I saw, people were showing me, saying, we know that John did it. Oh, we saw John with this girl. It makes me throw up. To know that these people have never met me, and they've never met my son. And there's all these things out there. When John has somebody drive by yelling murderer at him, or the same woman going in 4 times to report him speeding as a pizza driver to try and get him to lose his job. It's just...
The main thing that when people just don't know the situation, they don't know her and they don't know John, I understand that, but it's immediate for people to just go to John, and they would never just look at the whole picture. And I know it's hard for people when they don't know her personally, but that would be the one thing that would mess me up, is like, quit going to John. There's other options.
John maintained that on the evening of her disappearance, Katelyn was in good spirits and the couple had no arguments or disagreements. John also told police that just prior to leaving the party, Katelyn had given him a bag containing some of her old bank accounts and bills, and that she had asked him to burn these documents. He said that because they didn't own a shredder, this was something that they had done in the past. So John burned the paperwork in the bonfire that was set during the party that evening.
It seemed like a relatively safe neighborhood. You know, last person to see her, her fiance, of course. That may or may not be significant. But then I usually go on to describe the fact that his alibi for the night was that he was at a friend's house burning her papers. And so that usually captures people's interest. They're like, oh, interesting. So do you think he did it? And I say, well, I mean, obviously he should be looked at, but you can't assume just from that he did do it.
Friday evening, the night prior to Katelyn's disappearance, the couple had attended the Sacred Heart Festival, a weekend-long event that was taking place just a few blocks away from Katelyn's home.
It's like we went to the festival and then went back to John's house, and after that was the last time I saw her. I was at the bonfire that night.
John, what do you think happened? Do you suspect foul play?
I really don't know. I've been asked this question a lot, and I just have no idea. I couldn't tell you. I have the strongest thought that she would not run away. I mean, there's no reason for her to go anywhere. But other than that, I have no idea what could have possibly happened to her.
He was kind of disjointed at some times, I think, which obviously would be natural for this. I had someone who specializes in voice recognition who basically listens to audio, 911 calls and the like, to hear any glaring irregularities. And I thought that the analysis of this individual is interesting in saying that he was disassociating himself with Katelyn Markham and not using her name as typically you would when someone you love disappears.
She had sent me a picture of her that her boss took of her from her internship. I mean, she had 2 jobs, an internship, and went to school full time. So, I mean, she was consistently busy, but that stress made her stronger. I mean, she loved the fact that she was being so strong, and she was proud of herself. I mean, there was no anger at all when it came to high stress.
What are the reaction, because they've been rather tight-lipped, her family? How close is she to her mom and or dad, if either one?
She was very close to both of them. She really loved her parents very much, and they loved her back. I mean, they actually, she's adopted, and they had adopted her, and I mean, they really loved her very much, or they still love her, of course.
We also started getting hearsay, and again, it's not fact. There's no way to really corroborate this, but some people who were closer to the couple seem to indicate there may have been a rub going on. That Katelyn was a student, she's working a job. The rumor was that maybe he wasn't holding up his end of the agreement. They were engaged to be married, and piecing it together. And this is just me filling in the blanks here. I think as normal as that maybe there was some tension there. Maybe he felt that things weren't working out, and not saying that he did it, but again, they haven't excluded him as the primary suspect or a suspect in this, and you got to ask yourself why.
Katelyn's case began to draw national attention. John Carter was interviewed via telephone by Nancy Grace on 2 separate episodes of her television show.
I don't know, many things he said were factually inaccurate, simple things, including his own age. He said he'd taken a lie detector test. He had not. Things like that.
The case also drew the attention of Cincinnati restaurateur Jeff Ruby.
Cincinnati restaurateur Jeff Ruby is hoping $50,000 will lead to answers in the effort to find a missing Fairfield woman.
9 News reporter Bryce Onslinger is live at Jeff Ruby's steakhouse downtown with why Ruby is getting involved. Bryce?
Well, Clyde and Carol, Jeff Ruby's offering $25,000 for information into what happened to Katelyn Markham. That's added to an already $25,000 reward that was previously offered, making now the total reward $50,000 for information into what happened to Markham. The 22-year-old went missing on August 14th. She was last seen by her fiance, John Carter, at her townhome the night she disappeared. So far, investigators say there is no evidence of foul play, but there is also no reasonable explanation for Markham's disappearance. Ruby says he made the reward offer because money can make people that are scared to come forward more brave.
This guy, whoever did it, we don't know who did it, but whoever did it can do it to somebody else in greater Cincinnati. And Fairfield's a good community. It's the community that gives you what you have by supporting your businesses, by coming to your restaurants or whatever you do. And you should give some of it back to the community in different charities and different things. And here's a way of giving it back by giving your time. Just by going, the family really appreciates that. They see, when they see people show up, that means a lot to a family, especially someone high profile like me. But then I've given rewards a lot, just to, when there's something been murdered or missing. And usually the reward gets activity going and they find the guy who committed the murder. So that helps bring justice, at least, to the family and gets a murderer off the street.
Katelyn's disappearance was everything people were talking about on social media. Speculation began on who could have taken her. Perhaps a stranger, or worse yet, someone she knew.
Today, police released the 911 call made by her fiancé, John Carter. He's the last person to see Markham before she disappeared. In the call, he says he has no idea where she would be, and he says he has concerns about people that were at a festival up the street from where Markham lives.
The only thing that's not there is her cell phone, which is positive, but she's not answering it. So, and the Sacred Heart Festival is going on right up the street, and there's a lot of questionable people there, and it's just kind of, I'm sorry.
Once again, it was somebody that she had to have known. It almost appears like she let the door in, opened the door and said, "Come on in," or she stepped out. The way her keys were left, her keys and her purse were left in the middle of her bed, and all the doors locked, and it almost, it sounds hokey, but it's almost like an alien abduction. She's just, gone. No sign of anything. Just poof.
There were kids we went to school with that were not so stable, I guess, if you could say. So I definitely threw some names out to the police, like, you need to check out these people, because they were the first people to come to my mind.
To me, it appeared that it was somebody that knew her, because she's a smart girl, and she wouldn't just walk up to the door, and open the door for somebody that she doesn't know. But more than anything, it was that it had to have been someone that she knew.
It was kind of crazy once it all started really, really happening. Like, she's actually missing. We are having search parties, searching the woods. We're hanging up fires everywhere. It was really, really scary.
Very quickly, a friend of Katelyn's, Megan, had told us about a place called EquiSearch, but it had to be a family member. So I had said to Dave one time, Dave, have you heard of this place? He goes, yeah, that he had heard about it and he was going to contact them. So EquiSearch got there very quickly and we just all joined in on the search party.
Just days after she went missing, local groups are organized in an effort to find Katelyn. On September 1st, Texas EquiSearch also began searching for Katelyn.
Dave Rader is a local search volunteer who works with Miller. He explained the two will be looking for a church this evening to set up a command center.
We're going to look for a command center so we can set up, so we can be self-sufficient, a place where people will have, that they're familiar with, easy to find, easy parking, in and out, and we'll put on a search to get this done.
Texas EquiSearch is a search team that was based out of Houston, Texas. They specialize in missing person cases. I seen that there was a missing person here, which was Katelyn. And I have a friend that called me up that actually lives in Fairfield and asked me if I was going out to search for her. You know, they were doing a good job before we got on scene, and when we finally kind of sat down and put this together and started really rallying the troops, you know, the community, we started to expand that circle that they had already covered. So we needed to start going out a little bit, and recon is what we call it, is to start looking for viable areas that you could hide somebody. So you not only had to look at the inner city, but you also had to then go out into the country and start looking in that direction also. So it was quite the task.
On December 14th, a candlelight vigil was held for Katelyn.
Family and friends planning a candlelight vigil. It's going to be held tomorrow. Now, no one has seen the Fairfield woman for almost 5 months now. The vigil beginning at 5 o'clock tomorrow. It'll begin in the parking lot of the Main Street Market that's on Patterson Drive and end at the Fairfield Police Department on Pleasant Avenue.
A lot of friends and co-workers who have talked about her lately and said that how, you know, she made their day better just by her attitude. The influence that she had on people was remarkable.
April 2012, the body of a 15-year-old girl, Chelsea Johnson, was found in a creek bed just a mile from Katelyn's home. Police said that there was no connection between this death and Katelyn's disappearance. On June 21st, 2012, there was a glimmer of hope in the case. Rupert King, a 26-year-old man working at a gas station near Katelyn's residence, was arrested on a rape charge.
Tonight on a cold case, the search for a missing Fairfield woman, Katelyn Markham. The 22-year-old disappeared from Fairfield last August. Police are now investigating whether a man who lived in her neighborhood is possibly connected to her disappearance. This month, Oxford police arrested that man, 26-year-old Gurpreet Kong, for sexual assault that allegedly happened last year. Kong is in the Butler County Jail tonight under a $250,000 bond. Markham's friends are hoping this could be the break they've been praying for.
You know, I don't like putting it in my mind that someone could have done something like that to her, but I just hope that this is our answer and that we found something.
Police investigated King in connection with Katelyn's disappearance, but he was later exonerated. The case had again turned cold.
There's not really a definition of what is considered a cold case. How much time does it have to be, you know, unsolved for it to be cold? So what kind of time frame exactly is a case is cold? It really depends on what kind of evidence you were given at the crime scene or interviews and different statements you have to decide when it's actually cold. A lot of us like to do when all leads have been exhausted and you do not have a suspect.
Katelyn's family continued to wait for answers.
I kind of shut everything out. I don't really like to talk about it, so I kind of just shut everything out, don't really show emotions when it comes to stuff like this. Of course now I'm crying, but whenever, I've always been able to talk about it and be fine, and you know, people will be like, oh, you're so strong, you can talk about it, but I don't know, I kind of just shut everything out.
I think the hardest is her birthday, because it does fall 2 days after the day she went missing. So that August 14th, 15th, and 16th are the most difficult times. I think there's some things that could have been done differently, should have been done differently, resources used that were turned down. There are some specifics that I think were handled very poorly.
Many wondered when or if Katelyn would ever be found.
Now to that breaking news, authorities have identified the remains of Katelyn Markham, the woman missing from Fairfield. Her remains were discovered Monday in Cedar Grove, Franklin County, Indiana, on Big Cedar Road. Markham disappeared in August of 2011. Bryce Hanslinger is live in Fairfield tonight. Bryce, what are people there talking about this with you?
Well, Clyde, it's certainly not the outcome anybody here in Fairfield was hoping for, and tonight friends and family of Katelyn Markham know she won't be coming home. Volunteers spent days searching for Markham in the woods in and around her Fairfield home. Flyers were posted throughout the area. A $50,000 reward was offered, but for months there was nothing. Then Sunday, more than 2.5 years after she went missing, Indiana authorities found her body off Big Cedar Road near Cedar Grove, Indiana, 30 miles from Fairfield.
Katelyn's remains are found in Cedar Grove, Indiana, a small town about 30 miles west of Fairfield.
A lot of people spend a lot of time that didn't know each other to come and find, to try to help find Katelyn. Again, it's bittersweet. It's that double-edged sword that you want her to be found because now you know where she's at. But you always had that glimmer of hope that, you know, with all the people that were searching, we didn't find her. That gave you that hope that maybe she just needed to clear her head and one day she was going to walk back through that door.
The remains are found by Andy Hicks, a local man who was searching the remote rural area for scrap metal.
Just, you know, digging through this little area here, picking up some metal, and here found a jawbone right on the other side of that little tree right there.
I picked it up and I said, "That's not no animal." And I hung it in a tree and went and called the cops, and you know, they sent us to the DNR. DNR says, "Well, what makes you so sure it's a human jawbone?" And I said, "Well, it's got all its teeth and it's shaped just like mine."
Hicks is aware of all the attention and the importance of his discovery. He says that to some degree he is grateful that it has provided some answers.
Walking the creeks and got up in that area and started digging through stuff and found a jawbone. Went and called the authorities and waited and went back down there, and then she found the found the head, the skull, and hair and stuff.
3 days later, police confirmed that the remains belonged to Katelyn.
We are glad to have Katelyn home. We always had the hope to be able to see her again.
But now that they know Katelyn won't come home, the case takes a turn. It is now up to investigators to figure out what happened to her. Here's where the case stands tonight. Indiana State Police will be handling the investigation because Markham's body was found in Franklin County, Indiana. Investigators, however, are closely working with the Fairfield Police Department. As for the remains, it may be some time before David Markham can bury his daughter. The Franklin County coroner has legal custody of the remains, although they are now in Hamilton County for tests, which could take weeks, even months.
Got a phone call. I don't remember who it was from. I think it must have been from the Fairfield detective on the case, saying that remains were found. They believed it to have been Katelyn, but they weren't sure. They had to do, DNA testing. They actually identified her by her dental records.
I mean, they found her, but they still didn't know who did it. But I guess I was hoping that they would find her alive, so I wasn't really relieved that they found her like that.
I still held my feelings in check, because there's always that one little bit of you that is hoping that it's not, that she's still out there, that it's something else, even though you're so sure any other day. When it comes down to it, there's still that last little bit that says, no, it's not. She's still out there alive somewhere.
I called all my family and I was just bawling. It was very hard. I don't know if I talked to John that day or not, but I called all my family members and I was really upset. I think one of my friends, she called me before it was released on the media because they saw her teeth remains, and somebody told me a couple hours before it was released, and it was painful.
He's one of our mutual buddies at high school. His name is Steven. He called me and he's like, "Buddy, hey, I was on Facebook." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, what's up?" He said, "Where are you at?" I said, "Well, I'm at work, lunch." He said, "You sitting down?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, you might want to be." He said, "I was getting on my Facebook and I found the report from the news that they found her in Cedar, Indiana, and I dropped the phone. I had to call him back because I hung up on him. I sat there and I cried and I left the cafeteria. I went into one of their little offices, the little side rooms they had, and just prayed. That's really the only thing I could do.
Becky had always promised me, the lead detective, "I will tell you if it's something important. So it was about 3 days later, and she came over before it hit the news. She had called Dave, and she had met with Dave, and then she came over and she told me that it was Katelyn. This was reporting it as a dump site, that Katelyn was found in a dump. And it broke my heart to think of her in a dump. And I said to Becky, I just want to clean it up. I don't want anyone to look at that and say that she was found in a dump.
She is what every single mother ever dreamed of to date her child.
So the question now, where does the case go from here? Investigators tell I-Team reporter Jason Law they will now re-interview everyone connected with the case because they are starting from scratch.
Let's talk about the timing of this. It's been almost 2 years. It's her remains were found just kind of outside the area where you guys had kind of focused your search. How unusual are these incidences?
To go that far out is really unlikely. Statistics tell you within 3.1 miles of the home, not within 12, but now you're expanding that to 22 to 25 miles, so it's outside of the realm.
We did get the okay from Indiana State Patrol to go out and conduct another search looking for more remains of Katelyn. The next morning at 8:30 we started right on the dot, and we were literally raking, going through the debris piles, and then we were going down even further. So we broke for lunch, we came back, and lo and behold, we found our first bone probably at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And from there, once that happened, then we were more determined that we weren't leaving there until we pretty much had everything that we could possibly humanly find. Just sit there and see David witness this firsthand and see the pain and anguish is gut-wrenching. And again, that's what kept us going.
So NamUs is more of a cold case repository, so we have about 11,000 missing persons and about that many unidentified persons. At that lab, they will process direct samples. So literally they'll have bones that they'll saw into, they'll get the DNA samples from the bone marrow, amplify it, and try to create a sample that can be compared to the missing. And in a missing person, if it's not a direct sample from a person, the toothbrush, hairbrush, actually we prefer family reference samples. So we'd like to get a cheek swab. So it's just a buccal swab. We would get some of the cells from inside your cheek, and we would use those for comparison to unidentified remains. But the best thing you can do for your loved one, alive or dead, is to make sure we have as much information as possible, because if they are dead, you want the remains back. You want to get those back so that you can go through the normal grieving process. And believe me, that's important. Whether people realize it up front or not, it's important.
On August 13th, 2013, exactly 2 years from the last time that Katelyn was seen alive, Franklin County Coroner Wanda Lee declares Katelyn's manner of death as undetermined and her cause of death as homicide.
So when the postmortem examination was completed by the forensic pathologist, I then went from Cincinnati to Indianapolis to the forensic anthropologist's office, and then her remains were left in his care for a while, because there is a lot of work that a forensic anthropologist can do with skeletal remains. So he did his postmortem examination, and then they were returned to me, and then Dave had the decision on how he wanted to handle things from there, as far as funerals or a service, or whatever decisions he wanted to make.
With the discovery of Katelyn's remains in Cedar Grove, the Indiana State Police had joined what was now an official murder investigation.
There's somebody out there that knows what happened, and it's just a matter of finding that person, or finding someone that may have some information that may lead us to that person that committed this crime.
We're looking at any lead that comes up. We have some things in the lab right now in Ohio through Fairfield Police Department. Any leads that come up, we try to exhaust that lead. I think that we have to look at everybody as a suspect, and until we find that person that did this, everybody's gonna be a suspect.
Last person to allegedly see Markham was her fiance, John Carter. We've been trying to reach him for reaction, but we've had no luck. 9 on your side investigative reporter Jason Law just got off the phone with Fairfield's chief of police. He tells Jason that Carter is not a person of interest or a suspect at this time. In fact, he says they're not focused right now on any individual.
When people just don't know what the situation, they don't know her and they don't know John, I understand that, but it's immediate for people to just go to John, and they would never just look at the whole picture. And I know it's hard for people when they don't know her personally, but that would be the one thing that would mess me up, is like, quit going to John. There's other options than him, because I really don't think it was him.
We tried our theories. I mean, everybody had their own. A lot of people were pointing their fingers at John, and I've known him even longer. I've known him a very, very long time, and that's just, he could never do anything like that.
He was always there for Katelyn in the beginning. A lot of people say that, you know, he didn't seem like he was there once she went missing. But I did spend a lot of time with him after that. Being on the inside, it was different to me, you know. I mean, he opened up to me about it. He told me all the time that he missed her and loved her and just wanted her back. We just talked for hours on end about it, and, you know, he's always seemed innocent to me.
When they first started questioning her boyfriend, I guess it had come up that they had an argument prior, and I was like, I don't see him as one of those people. I don't. He cared for her, he was there for her. Yeah, everybody has, me and her argue all the time, but I never harm her. You know, everybody has their arguments.
I think that an argument might have ensued and something happened, and that a group of friends or solo, it might have been a solo thing, but I don't believe that either. Everybody loves each other enough to not want any one person to get in trouble. Even though they love Katelyn as well, they wouldn't want anything bad to happen to anybody else.
A private memorial service was held for Katelyn.
The sound of the guitar filled this picnic area at Harbin Park like Katelyn Markham's presence did when she walked into a room. Katelyn's cousins can fondly remember that.
Katelyn was her own kind. She's very creative and spiritual and lovely girl.
Yeah, she was
very
just
close.
a very free-spirited person, and she would have loved to see something like this.
From crafty flowers to bright balloons and lots of food, colors filled the celebration in honor of Katelyn's personality. Around 100 people came out to celebrate Katelyn's life and remember her in a happy way. Even people that never met Katelyn wanted to be there for her dad, Dave. Katelyn loved art, and people got to see her gift for creativity. All of this a gift to Katelyn's dad. So grateful for the outpouring of support.
Katelyn brought everybody together in the original searches, and that's how so many of these people have met. And it's sort of a reunion for them as well.
Somehow staying linked to these folks who helped search helps a grieving father.
It's a way for me to give back. Also, it's a way for me to connect with that time. It's painful to do it, but it also reminds me of Katelyn, and it reminds me of the gratitude I felt at that time.
Family and friends of Katelyn Markham said their final goodbyes. A memorial for Markham was held at Fairfield High School.
Katelyn Markham's casket stood high on stage in the auditorium of Fairfield High School. Her artwork by its side. The room was filled with family, friends, and people that never even met the 21-year-old whose life was cut short far too soon.
We would have had our kiss. We would have had our marriage. We would have had our honeymoon. We would have our kid. And we would have our life. And we would grow old together.
An emotional John Carter, Markham's fiance, spoke in front of the crowd, reminiscing of the times he shared with the love of his life. Carter's cousin says she considers herself lucky to have called Katelyn family.
Whenever I think of her, I just think of this smile and this artwork, and she was just a colorful human being. She meant well to everybody. Everybody was a friend.
People from around the tri-state gave up hours upon hours of time searching for Markham when she went missing. While Diane Smith never met Markham, she feels like she's known her forever.
Just by going through all of her pictures and her art, and you just feel like you know her. You know, the type of person that she was.
especially for Dave Rader, who headed up the search for Markham. While it's a bittersweet day for him, he says there's more that needs to be done before Markham's family can truly have closure.
And I do believe that one day this will, the final chapter, you might say. I mean, we're 2/3 of the way there. All we need to do now is find the person that did this to her, and then that will be the closure that the family needs.
And the family is holding a private service for Katelyn tomorrow. Following that, she will be laid to rest. Amy Wattis, Night on Your Side.
Thank you, Amy. The investigation into the disappearance and death of Katelyn Markham continues, as she mentioned, despite the coroner ruling the cause of death as undetermined. It was ruled a homicide. Right now, police are going through hundreds of interviews conducted immediately after Markham disappeared. Police say someone knows something. Experts say it could take months or years to determine what happened to Katelyn.
A startling new discovery that may answer the question, who killed Katelyn Markham? Searchers say they found additional skeletal remains that may belong to Markham.
The discovery was near Cedar Grove, Indiana, where a man found some of her remains a year ago.
They were found in the general vicinity that Katelyn was, but they were scattered quite a distance away.
Remains Rader describes as small and large in size.
You have to remember that the topography had just changed tremendously over the course of the year. So it's not ISP, it's not Fairfield, it's not anybody's fault that these came to light.
Rader says
There was a human bone that was found by just some hikers, and so we went and about 12 of us from Texas EchoSearch went and scoured it and found the rest of her, except for a few portions of her, small fingers.
Anything new, another fresh set of eyes, somebody else looking at it a different way, a new team, obviously we haven't come up with much yet, so each little piece is maybe one step closer.
Markham says he feels his daughter came home a year ago when her remains were first found. His focus now is getting justice for his daughter.
I believe God's going to reveal things at the appropriate time. Yeah, it's frustrating that it's not now. That keeps me going. I don't question his plan. I do believe he has a plan, and I do believe that I will see an end to this. So I'll wait, I'll look, I'll help. I think time will tell.
And you think that this could be the day that all the answers are that he's looking for, and that's what he's looking for. He wants justice for his daughter.
There's never total relief until there's a good clue or a good lead or something promising. Yes, it's comforting to know that, or to possibly think that more of her will be back, and that I'm getting closer to having all of her. But there's no total relief or total satisfaction until there's a good clue.
Years have now passed, and it seems that we are no closer to solving Katelyn's case than we were at the time of her disappearance. We are hopeful that one day she will receive the justice that she deserves. Someone knows what happened to her. Someone knows the truth.
We always hold out hope. We always follow up on every lead. There are many cases that are solved years after the fact. And it generally will involve somebody coming forward and providing information. Somewhere out there, someone knows exactly what happened, and the circumstances will be right, and they'll either provide the information about someone else, or perhaps it's been known that someone gets a conscience and comes forward.
For Dave's sake and for the community, I hope it is. I hope it is soon. This has got to stop.
I feel like they're just not pushing into it enough. I really don't know. I hope so. I can't go on not knowing what happened. I think about it all the time.
Like with most things, it's best to hope for the best and plan for the worst. But I'm not so sure unless someone's willing to stand up. and say what they did, no matter who did it. All I can do is hope.
But I'm hoping with the private investigator that's working on it, you know, he seems to have gotten a lot of information out of people. So I have high hopes.
I haven't given up. I hope so. I mean, somebody's got to know something. It's just, when are they going to talk? I don't know how somebody could hold that in, you know, for so long if you did something like this, you know?
I think she definitely deserves it. And like I said, I think it was someone that knew her and was close to her, just based on everything that we found out so far. Like, my dog Murphy was locked in her room and just stuff like that, and she wouldn't have opened the door and just locked Murphy in there. Someone knew to lock him up in there like that. So I think it was someone she knew, and because of that, I think they need to be found.
Answers.
On a day when families were enjoying a day at the park, Dave Markham met me to talk about his daughter's case. But first I asked him how he manages day to day.
You know, yes, every day I think about Katelyn. Not every day is a bad day.
He says his daughter would still want him to find joy in life.
Katelyn was positive and full of life, and I think it would hurt her feelings if I were to, you know, not live my life.
But part of that means hiring a private investigator to take a look at the case. He says he's experienced frustration with what he believes is a lack of progress on the part of the Indiana State Police, which is investigating the homicide, and Fairfield, which is playing a supporting role.
We're going to turn up the heat with him, and he's going to really, you know, start pushing. We gave Fairfield in Indiana, I think, you know, plenty of time. So now hopefully he'll come in and look at it differently.
In the meantime, there's only one thing he asks the community, which has provided him tremendous support during the last 3 years.
Just continue to hope and pray for Katelyn's justice.
I think it may take a while, but I think Katelyn will get her justice. I think she will get what she deserves, and I don't know. I'm sure it will be solved someday.
In December of 2015, Katelyn's father, David, asked that new investigators be assigned to her case. In the days that follow, the Butler County Sheriff's Department agrees to review Katelyn's case.
After a plea from Katelyn's father, Dave, Butler County Sheriff Richard Jones said his office will help Fairfield police solve the 4-year-old case. And private investigator J. Ryan Green disclosed that testing is underway on a piece of evidence that was available 4 years ago but was never processed. He added that 4 witnesses with Katelyn within a day of her disappearance were never interviewed.
On August 2011, my daughter went missing. At that point, I had complete and total faith in the Fairfield Police Department. Over time, I've lost that faith. I've not lost that faith simply because no one has been arrested or there's not been a conviction or justice for Katelyn's murder. I'm not a police officer or a detective. I'm a father of a murdered child. And I had faith that everything needed to be done was going to be done. I now know that was not the case.
Markham made that statement surrounded by private investigator J. Ryan Green and attorney Tina Barrett. The reason is testing underway on evidence that could crack the case wide open.
There's a possibility that DNA can be taken from it.
Yes. However, nobody is saying exactly what that is.
This piece of evidence existed 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. It could have been processed. There was a choice made, a decision made not to. But now it is being processed.
Green says the item has been tested by the Indiana State Police Crime Lab and a second test is underway in Ohio.
It's been hot and very cold here. I know I was here in February and I'm from Florida. So, you know, that messes with DNA. So can they get a DNA profile from this? I don't know. But we're optimistic.
So what if there is DNA on that item?
There would be an arrest if it comes back favorably.
Dave Markham says a fresh start is needed now, which is why he's calling on Sheriff Jones to take over.
I'm not asking for miracles, but I believe a new direction is needed. With a department I can trust.
I've got my supervisors here together. We sat down, we discussed it briefly, and we came to the conclusion that we would give this another set of eyes.
Well, the sheriff made it clear he's going to work with Fairfield, not take over the case, and added detectives are already on the job sorting through what's been done. Fairfield police issued a statement saying they have no problem in another agency joining in to review what's been done the past 4 years.
I have a very strong opinion based on these two documents or statements alone. There is a 911 call and there is a radio interview 6 days later. My conclusion is that the caller of the 911 call did not work with police to facilitate the flow of information to help recover Katelyn. He withheld information deliberately, particularly about what happened the last time he was with her and where they were. There's missing information there. In the introduction of Katelyn, he used an incomplete social introduction, and for the rest of the 911 call, he did not use her name even once, sans repeating the formal name because he was asked to. The follow-up interview was only 6 days later, not 6 months later. In that follow-up interview, he references her in a past tense way, not regarding an event, but regarding who she is and who she loves and who loves her, repeatedly in the past tense. This is an indication that is conclusive. He knows or believes she's dead. Where did that knowledge come from? So I am looking at someone who made this call who is deceptive, who is withholding information, and who's revealing to the public that he knew she wasn't going to be found alive only 6 days after the 911 call. It doesn't mean that he killed her, and I'm not saying he killed her. He certainly could have, but he knows what happened to her. So if it was someone else that did the actual killing, he's aware of it, and he knows it. Legally, John Carter is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And what I say today is my opinion of the call, my analysis.
Fairfield 911, where's your emergency?
Hi, my name is John Carter. I am calling. I know that you're not supposed to report a missing person before 24 hours, but my fiance is missing. I can't find her anywhere.
Homicide calls that begin with a greeting are statistically likely to have a guilty caller. And it makes sense. If your fiance was missing, you're probably not going to start off with a hello. You're going to say right off the bat, my fiance and her name is missing. That's your priority.
Okay, where did you see her last?
I saw her at like 12 o'clock last night. She stays in a house by herself, so I'm really nervous. Her car is still there.
Okay,
her
where
purse
at?
is still.
Is there an address?
Yeah, 5214 Dorshire Drive.
5214?
Dorshire, yes.
Okay. And you're out there now?
I'm heading out there now. I have been trying to get a hold of her, and I decided to go by her house to see if she was okay. And her car was still there. She would be at work right now with her car, which is why I'm really freaking out.
What's her name?
Katelyn Markham.
He gave his full name correctly, John Carter, but he didn't give the victim's name. My fiance Katelyn is missing. My fiance Katelyn Markham is missing. That tells us, in our rules of social introductions, there is a problem with the relationship. The dispatcher said, okay, where did you see her last? I can't find her anywhere. That means he's looked at specific places and he's thinking of a specific place. I can't find her anywhere. Keep that in mind as I go along. Where did you see her last? Okay. The operator asks, give me the location where you last saw her. John Carter refuses to answer. He says this.
Have you called hospitals or jails or anything? Where was she at midnight last night when you last
She was
saw
at her house. She was going to bed. She wasn't going out to do anything, so she would have been in her bed. And I mean, I've been with her for 6 years.
Does this answer contain the location? Means he pauses. He needs to think about this before he answers it. Right away, that's point number one of sensitivity. I saw her at like 12 o'clock last night. That answers the question, when did you see her last? Not where. I'm not interpreting, I'm listening. Then we have a point of deception. She stays in a house by herself. I'm really nervous. Now he's talking about his emotions. I haven't heard him express anything to show what Katelyn, missing, vulnerable, is going through, but I'm hearing him talk about himself again. What we look for people to do is tell us what happened. When someone tells us what didn't happen, what wasn't thought, what wasn't said, instead of what did happen, what was thought, what was said, it's called a negative. What someone tells us in the negative is more important than what someone tells us in the positive. So he's telling us what she didn't do. Then he said, and I mean, I've been with her for 6 years. Not I've been with Katelyn. Not Katelyn and I have been together for 6 years. Not even we have been together. I have been with her for 6 years. The word with, when it is between people, indicates distance.
She's not deceiving, she doesn't...
Okay, and you guys didn't have an argument or anything?
Not at all.
He said, she's not deceiving, He introduced deception into this 911 call. That's not expected. And he stopped himself. It's called self-censoring. He stopped there. He didn't want to go any further. But in introducing something in the negative, he's calling our attention to a topic. And the topic he's associating is with Katelyn, and the topic is deception.
And have you talked to her mom or anybody like that? See if maybe she's gone shopping or...
I called her father. The only thing that's not there is her cell phone, which is positive, but she's not answering it. So, and the Sacred Heart Festival is going on right up the street, and there's a lot of questionable people there, and it's just kind of... I'm sorry.
He then introduces a red herring. He now has given them some suspects, which don't include him. Because he's a good guy. He keeps the rules. He's very polite to police. He wouldn't even call, but except he's such a good guy that, I know you're supposed to wait to the 24 hours, but I'm doing it anyway. And he's also sorry. And I'm listening to him. He says there's a lot of questionable people there at the Sacred Heart Festival. So he's now giving them to think about that. But he was asked, have you talked to her mom or anyone like that? And he said, I called her father. The next thing I expect to hear is, well, what did dad say? What did mom say? What did other people say? Instead, he went to something that he needed to tell them. He needed them to know the only thing that's not there is her cell phone. Now, what does that mean? The only thing that's not there is a cell phone. Has he inventoried everything in the house already? Has he gone through the house and knows the only thing that is missing? Cell phone? So he's introduced cell phone statistically. When someone brings in the free editing process, cell phone or phone, there's a statistic correlation between that and placing the person at the crime scene. So you must be on alert. We must be on alert for something about the cell phone that will be part of a script. So we're listening. Is something he's going to do with this cell phone, because it's important enough for him to mention in a 911 call. It's important enough for us to listen. He is deceptive about the last time he saw her alive. He expresses no concern for Katelyn while he highlights his own emotions. He is deceptive about saying that he searched everywhere for her. And he is also very concerned about how he is perceived by police rather than show actual concern for Katelyn. So my conclusion of the 911 call is that he has what we call the status of a guilty caller. It doesn't mean he killed her. He is deliberately withholding information because he knows what's happened to her. He knows what happened to her, and he's suppressing that information. And not about Katelyn. I have very little information about Katelyn. The only thing I know about her is that she's missing and her relationship to him, my fiance. And then he mentioned the phone, which is going to become important. So when we get to the point of text messages or calls, we need to be on the alert that he already telegraphed something so important about that cell phone before we get to the second interview, which is the radio interview.
Let me ask you, when was the last time you saw Katelyn?
I saw her at her house on Saturday night.
Last Saturday night. And you thought nothing of it. It's like, love you, see you later. What was the last communication you had with her? Did you speak to her on the phone?
No, she had sent me a few text messages after I had left her house. Just a few things about some things she wanted me to do for her. She was consistently busy, so I had to help her do a lot of things.
This statement itself, in correlation to the 911 call, should cause police to consider, did he send text messages himself? Remember, he was asked, who did you call in her family? Her mother? He said, no, her father. And then he mentioned the cell phone, unnecessarily taking the direction off of who he spoke to onto something brand new, introducing something brand new about deception, he mentioned, and then regarding, did you speak to mom, you speak to father? I spoke to the father. Instead of telling us what that was about, he introduces a cell phone. He elevated cell phone, very important, and now we know why.
And all of a sudden you don't hear from her. At what point did you think maybe there's a problem?
After I went home, I sent her a good morning text message, and then I woke up the next day, and normally she sends me a good morning text message, but she sends me something back saying thank you and all that stuff, but she didn't send anything, but that didn't entirely worry me. I just thought maybe she was busy or something, or she just woke up late for work or something. But then, there was just she sent me, then I sent her a few more text messages, no response, and all that stuff. And
she just woke up late for work or something. But, and the word but refutes or minimizes that which preceded it, but then there was just I sent, she sent me, or then I sent her. When someone stutters on their pronouns, it's an indication of increase in anxiety. We call it the stuttering I. We have been using the pronoun I since we were very little. We have used the pronoun I millions of times. We're really good at it. When someone can't keep their pronouns straight, you're looking at deception. If the only lie detection training someone was to have was just pronouns alone, you could be pretty good at it. He is confusing his pronouns because he is not speaking from experiential memory. He is speaking from script. In the scripted alibi, the experiences has to be a self-reference because it didn't exist experientially. He didn't experience these things. They're not real. That's why he's stuttering over them.
The thing is she had sent me a picture of her that her boss took of her from her internship. I mean, she had 2 jobs, an internship, and went to school full time. So, I mean, she was consistently busy, but that stress made her stronger. I mean, she loved the fact that she was being so strong, and she was proud of herself. I mean, there was no anger at all when it came to high stress.
I mean, she had 2 jobs and her internship. I mean, she loved the fact that she was being so strong, and she was proud of herself. And there was no anger. All those references are in the past tense, as if she's dead. It's how we speak of dead people. Given the close proximity of time, 6 days, unless police have told him that she's dead, there should not be this element in his language. He's signaling to us by his language, he knows she's dead. He's already moved on, in fact.
John Carter's with us. John Carter, the fiance of Katelyn Markham. Katelyn's been missing from Fairfield now for, it'll be a week tomorrow. And you're encouraged, if you have any information, to call Fairfield Police as they continue to investigate this. I believe, from what I understand, she was going to graduate from the Art Institute of Cincinnati sometime in the next 30 days, 45 days. She works at September, David's Bridal. So she has the 2 jobs there. You guys were planning to move out of state in the late fall, early winter this year and get married, right?
Well, we weren't going to get married until way after we moved out. I mean, I wasn't rushing anything. I mean, neither one of us wanted to. The original plan was to actually leave in October, but then my brother was coming into town, so she and I suggested to just wait until after he came in town, so we decided to postpone it till November, and she could have easily had said, I just don't want to go, and I would have been totally fine with that. There was no, you know, we weren't forcing it. You know, we weren't trying to do anything we couldn't handle.
Instead of just saying we were going to get married, or yes, he feels the need to go into the delay and to make sure we understand she agreed with this delay. That need to persuade us that there was no disagreement suggests there was probably a very strong disagreement. Someone did something the other person didn't like.
What are the reaction, because they've been rather tight-lipped, her family? How close is she to her mom and or dad, if either one?
She was very close to both of them. She really loved her parents very much, and they loved her back. I mean, they actually, she's adopted, and they had adopted her, and I mean, they really loved her very much, or they still love her, of course.
Well, they've been tight-lipped. How close is she to her mom and dad? She was very close to both of them. She was very close. She's no longer close to them. It's an indication she's dead. Because at any given time, you can say she was concerning a job that was in the past. This is now an emotion existing between Katelyn, who is still nameless, and her parents. He labels the emotion in the past tense. This is the clearest representation. This man knows or believes at this time Katelyn is not going to be found alive. The question for the police is, how does he know that? And they really loved her. And then he goes, they still love her, of course. He caught himself, and he corrected his language. There was no pre-thought to that. He revealed that she's dead.
They haven't basically ruled anyone out as a suspect yet, I'm assuming.
No, not at all.
Now that they tell you that while you are not being considered as a suspect, you haven't been ruled out? Because you were the last one to see her.
I mean, yeah. I mean, and even before, like as soon as as soon as the police were involved, I knew that I was going to be considered a suspect.
Right.
It's always going to be, you know, the last person to see her and or the closest person to her. So, I mean, and the one who sees her every day. I mean, you can't just rule out anybody, you know?
Right.
As the interview progressed, he did not use her name. And then asked about being suspects. They said, because you were the last one to see her. And it produced a stuttering I. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, and and when even before, like, as soon as I don't know. The anxiety about being a suspect is through the roof. As soon as police were involved, I knew I was going to be considered a suspect. So here we're going to say that he didn't do it. It's always going to be, you know, the last person to see her and or the closest person to her. Not the closest man or not me, the person. Do you remember he referred to a person before? The person that took her, the person that they did this? It's a person. The extreme distancing language is that psychological and emotional distancing from her because there was trouble between them. Something had gone wrong. He introduced deception about her. He introduced things about her that were negatives when he should have only been praising her. The 911 call was about him. In both 911 call and in the interview, he utters the words, "I'm sorry." I don't think this was premeditated. I think things spiraled out of control, and that led him to either assault her and go too far to where she died, or be involved with someone else that did it. But he is innocent, judicially innocent, and has a presumption of legal innocence in our country, and this is solely my opinion, and it is not based upon any information from any law enforcement, only the two public statements that I have. For me, it's clear. It's not iffy, it's not perhaps, that I'm staking out now a strong position this man has guilty knowledge of what happened to Katelyn Markham.
So I was dealing with an awareness that she knew her assailant well, and that the other male involved was also well known to her. In fact, I kept using a particular title which Missy was familiar with relative to the second male. So I've placed the probable explanation of how she died, and I do feel she was murdered in that townhouse. That's where she died. The timeline where she's arguing with two men, and it's a very nasty, threatening argument on both sides. They're being nasty, she's being nasty. But at that point, no one harms her. Then the two men leave. One of the men comes back, and it's that man who actually beats her terribly, and then calls the other man that had left, and he returns. Together, they dispose of her remains. My sense from when he came back to the townhouse, he came with the intent to kill her, because she posed, in his view, she posed a threat to him and a criminal enterprise he was involved in. So he just decided to take care of it. And that's how he thinks. Not something you or I can really relate to. I don't think she stood a chance when she opened that door. I am praying, and will be actively praying, that we get a good detective, even if it's a private investigator, that can pursue the details that I have produced, because putting pressure in the right place will bring a solution.
She may be gone, but she is not forgotten. She continues to live within us, within our hearts, and within our memories.
I think if they continue to have the private investigator working on the case, that he'll stay on Fairfield's rear end to keep working, because there's no reason that this should just get pushed aside. There's no reason it should just get pushed aside. Everyone deserves justice, especially a beautiful person like Katelyn Markham.
Like, I love her. I miss her so much.
Little group that me and her and Sarah Collingsworth had. I just think about all the fun times. And that's pretty much all I can think about, because I don't want to think about anything else.
Sweet, she was kind. She'd give the shirt off your back, would care for you, be the person to come up to you if you're crying, having a bad day. She just really was that kind of person.
Man, this was literally the first time I met her. She just came up and just snapped a picture right in her face, because she was just a lovely person, and I knew right away I was gonna like her. And like I said, we all became best buddies, the four of us all together.
Amazingness, you know, she loved everybody, like I said. She was just such a great person. It kind of tears your world apart knowing that someone so good was taken from us so soon. I don't know, it's just her artwork and her colorfulness and her laugh and just everything good.
It's hard to say, but just bright colors and butterflies and smiles and laughter and goofiness, and you know, she had an off-the-wall sense of humor, but she had a great sense of humor because she carried herself with such confidence and such a love for life. It just seeped out every pore of her body. She was the type of person that could wear plaids and stripes of totally opposing colors and pull it off and just look absolutely beautiful. But it was because of her personality.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when the skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
It's a very special day to dedicate this tree to Katelyn. Just her love for nature, and it's a butterfly magnolia tree. So in the spring, the blooms are going to look like a butterfly in flight. And I just think it's very special, you know, to be it for Dave, and it'll be special for him to have somewhere to visit Katelyn, you know, a memorial for Katelyn. She loved butterflies. Yeah, she loved butterflies.
Katelyn Markham was an amazing young woman. I should know, because I knew her. My name is Ashley Griggs, and she was my friend. The art is what brought us together. She was more of the drawer, painter, and a very talented one. But it was like that paint ran through her veins. It's hard to really put in words how great of a person she was, but I just enjoyed watching this young teenage girl grow in and mature into this wonderful, beautiful woman that she was, getting ready to graduate, getting ready to get married. Her eyes were bright, and you could tell she was ready to start a bright new future. And I miss her dearly. I know you all do, even though if you didn't have a chance to actually know her, what you knew about her. She was a wonderful person. And I'm glad we were able to come here and make this day beautiful and glorious and special for her. And I thank you all for coming out here and being a part of that.